Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest and greatest episode of the Richard Watkins Podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. But before we get started, we have to give a huge shout out to the people who make this podcast possible, the Science Policy Action Network. Listen, innovation is moving forward at a breakneck pace, and your family, your company, the organizations that you might work for or be involved with may feel like you're being left in the dust. The Science Policy Action Network is here to bridge the gap between innovation and you. So, whether you're an administrator, an educator, or a public servant, just know that the Science Policy Action Network is here to have your back, just to make sure that you have the information at your disposal to make the best possible decisions for yourself, for your company, or for your community. If you're looking for more information, visit the Science Policy Action Network at www.span-inc.org. That is www.span-inc.org. All right, now with that out of the way, let's get right into the reason that you are all here with us today. We have with us none other than Stephen Valentine. Bear with me for a minute because this person's resume is lengthy, but you got to hear it all. All right, the North Carolina Central University Veterans Law Clinic will be led by Stephen Valentine. This is coming from the biography on North Carolina Central University's page, who served as active U.S. Army and U.S. Army Reserve. Stephen is a graduate of Morehouse College with a bachelor's degree in political science, cum laude, and he went on to earn his master's of social work degree from the University of Pennsylvania, where he was awarded the Samuel Sylvester Award for Outstanding Achievement and Leadership. Later, he received his Juris Doctorate degree from North Carolina Central University School of Law. Hold on, shout out. I've got a North Carolina Central University School of Law mug right here because I just knew who I was talking to today. After receiving a Bronze Star Medal for service during Operation Iraqi Freedom. During his military career, he attended the Army Medical Department Officer Basic and Advanced course at the Army Medical Department Center and School in San Antonio, Texas, where he was on the Commandant's List and recipient of the Colonel Richard Lynch Leadership Award. Later, he attended the Army Judge Advocate Officer Basic course at the Army Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School at the University of Virginia, where he was awarded the Judge Advocate General's Leadership Award. Stephen is a member of the Bar of the District of Columbia, the United States Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, United States Court of Appeals for Armed Forces, United States Army Court of Appeals, and the Department of Veteran Affairs accredited attorney. Stephen is a former Presidential Management Fellow with the United States Department of State and Political Military Bureau, and he served as a detailed special assistant United States attorney in the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia. He also served on the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa with assignment to the office of Congressman Donald Payne of New Jersey's 10th District. Prior to being appointed as director of the Veterans Law Clinic, Stephen served as an assistant professor in the undergraduate and graduate social department here at North Carolina Central University. Woo! And that was certainly a mouthful, but I know I left something out. You're doing something really, really big right now. You were just elected. You got some public service credentials that are awaiting you. Tell us a little bit about your next journey, Stephen Valentine, ladies and gentlemen.
So, Dr. Watkins, thank you for that introduction. And I like to say that the journey is much different than the presentation. And so, to the extent that the presentation was one noteworthy, I would say that the journey was even more special. So, as you know, Dr. Watkins, recently the people of Durham County put their faith and trust in me and awarded me with a seat to serve on the Durham County Board of Commissioners. And I count it an honor and a privilege to be able to serve the people of Durham County. And I look forward to serving in that capacity and making the impact here in Durham.
Hey, now, a lot of people don't really know this, so break it down for the audience. What exactly does Durham County consist of?
So when you ask the question, what does Durham County consist of? A misnomer is that the city and the county are separate. And so while there is a separate municipality that's called the city of Durham, the fact of the matter is the city is part of the Durham. So every square inch of Durham County, to include Research Triangle Park, um, stretching south and stretching north as far as Rougemont, all the way to the Pershing County line, and also to the west, as far west as Orange County, the Orange County line, and to our east, Wake County. And so I plan on making sure that everyone who encompasses every square inch of the county are provided the necessary support that they need from my office.
Okay, so break it down. What does the Durham County Board of Commissioners, what do they do, and what are the responsibilities of a county commissioner?
So the largest responsibility of a county commissioner is to provide the budgetary requirements for the county, and so they make sure that the functions of government can work throughout Durham County. Just to give you an example of the types of departments that are funded through the county commission, Durham Public Schools are funded from the county commission. Social services around the county are supported by the county commission. And so all the functional areas throughout the county come to the Board of Commissioners with their budgetary requirements. And we collectively work to ensure that we're spending the taxpayers' monies appropriately here in Durham County. Now, I don't take office until December after the general election. But I think that there are some challenges that we face here in Durham County over the next couple of years. I know that here recently, the current commissioners ensured that the Department of Public Education here, or Durham Public Schools, was funded. The complete ask was funded this year, and I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like in the out years. But to the extent that we were able to meet the mail and that requirement, I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like in the out years. But on the other hand, I guess a good news story, somewhat, is that with the reevaluations of properties here in Durham County that's upon us, there will be more tax revenues that's available. And so that's the good news story. But on the back end, while taxes will not increase in that particular area, the sticker shock associated with decreasing values of homes here in Durham County will probably be very alarming to our citizens. And so we have some challenges in that regard.
I yeah, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that. And when you come into that role, not like you said, you don't step into that office until December. And a lot can change between now and then. But as you are right now, like what are you kind of looking at like some of your biggest issues? What are some of the ways, in your opinion, um that maybe the county commission or the board of county commissioners hasn't kind of lived up, because you obviously ran for the seat because you saw an opportunity for improvement. What areas of improvement need like the most attention? What are some of the key focuses that you feel you will focus on during your tenure?
So during the election, if you were following closely, I was talking to members of Durham County about several key areas that, quite frankly, work hand in glove. First, with regards to public safety, public safety is a necessary ingredient for any success that we're going to have across the county. So I'll be looking at how we are funding the sheriff's office and the initiatives that they have around the county. And I also talked a lot about wanting to ensure that here in Durham County, we are successful in arriving at universal pre-K. And I think the existing county commissioners have done a great job in pushing us in that direction. And I think that access to early childhood education, universal pre-K, is an essential ingredient for how we see ourselves with respect to economic development. And so parents need to be able to have necessary childcare to be able to be an active player in the marketplace. And so if we can help families out with early childhood education, that not only helps for the development education of young people, it also helps parents. And I'm also going to be looking at on the back end of the school day with respect to aftercare. And so there's really not a lot of funding in that area. There is some, but there's not a lot. And so I'll be looking at the front end and the back end of education with respect to our children and the needs of families to ensure that they're able to add to the economic viability of our community. As you know, Richard, there's a lot of, and I don't have to tell you this, you're fully aware, there's a lot of industry coming here to Durham County. I want to make sure that we have the available workforce to respond to growing needs here in Durham County. And so those are the areas that I'll be looking at: public safety, early childhood education, aftercare, and also the economic development in our county, ensuring that I'm a good ambassador and willing to put out the good word about the great things that are happening here in Durham County, so that we can bring additional industry here. So those are several things that I'll be focusing on.
I want to back up a little bit, and you talked about, public safety, you talked about education, universal pre-K, and you've been talking about these things, for a while. Even before this race, I had the opportunity to really come to know you when we were both running for the U.S. House of Representatives, and I don't know if I told you then, but I was absolutely, blown away by you as a man, and you brought that to your candidacy. You're one of the most brilliant people that I've ever had the opportunity to know, and obviously your resume, although it's long, it doesn't even do it service, right? And obviously, speaking of that word service, thank you for your service. And I guess that's a great transition to, I think, my next question going into your background. How do you feel that your life as, a member of the U.S. military, your commitment to service in that capacity, how do you think that informs, your role as a leader, right? You've gotten tons of leadership awards, and now you're committing yourself to public service. I mean, honestly, once again, now as a civilian, how do you think your role, your work in the military informs how you approach leadership?
Well, let me first add a little bit to something that you said about us getting to know each other initially. You're quite modest, Dr. Watkins, and I want everyone to know that when I first was interested in getting involved in public service through politics, I actually reached out to you. And so I want to thank you for helping me get that light torched and getting me into the public spaces necessary in order to make a run for public office, which is not always the easiest thing to do. So you're quite modest, Dr. Watkins, and so thank you for your friendship and also your competition. And so I enjoyed being in the political space with you. We were always respectful combatants, but nonetheless always interesting and engaging And through that, I think we have developed quite a friendship, which isn't always necessarily the case. Now, with respect to the question you asked about my military service, I think the military in and of itself provides an opportunity for you to see the world from a different lens, number one. And the opportunities that you have for leadership to be groomed and to be able to have access to the ability to lead people and provide for resources for people at a young age is much different than any other career field that someone might be able to get involved in. And so it's not always the case that you're initially given a lot of responsibilities if you enter the corporate sector, for example, or maybe you decide to work at a law firm. You usually start with sort of entry level responsibilities and then work your way through the organization to increasing positions of responsibility. But in the military, at a very young age, you're given vast opportunities to lead, and quite frankly, in some instances, the ability to find out very early in your career about the potential pitfalls to leadership. And so, and you're able to do that in such a way that you have more senior people around you who are able to groom you and prepare you for positions of leadership where you're out front and making those hard decisions that really have an impact on people and the world. And so through those experiences, I think I've been shaped to be a bona fide institutionalist. And what that means is that I believe ultimately in our system of government. And so I think our systems of government are in place for a reason. And I think that the key part about that is ensuring that we have the right people in the right place at the right time to execute the necessary things that are required to be successful. And in the military, being successful is ensuring that the men and women who decide to put the uniform on behalf of our country are prepared ultimately for the defense of our nation. And so I think being in positions of increasing responsibility at a very early age gives you, number one, the confidence, and number two, the types of experiences that put you in a place for potential leadership down the road.
You mentioned pitfalls of leadership pitfalls. What are some of those pitfalls?
So I think as a young person, the ability to be put in a position where many people that are your subordinates are much older than you and have more experiences with life. And so how you negotiate those experiences and are placed in charge under those circumstances is very challenging. But I think that the way that the military is set up with regards to its rank structure creates a buffer for some of that. But nonetheless, it's very challenging sometimes, particularly when you come upon individuals who, quite frankly, could be in leadership position themselves. But for the opportunities that you have, meaning myself, the equation could have been much different. And so sometimes those situations are quite challenging, not necessarily from your perspective, but for someone else's and how they perceive you as the leader in the organization. And so those sorts of pitfalls help for you to grow and for you to finally grow comfortable with knowing that when in charge, you're tasked with being in charge. And so when the weight of responsibilities fall on you, you know that, in fact, they do belong to you, and then you adjust yourself accordingly.
Yeah, I really hear that. And if I heard it correctly, your kind of leadership style is like knowing that you're in charge, but also knowing that you're responsible for others, right? There are people in your charge, right? And I think that's a unique way of really looking at it. Also, I want to go.
If I could make a point about that,
Yes, sir.
when I was a young lieutenant, there was a General Edmonds. She's actually one of the first women to arrive at the rank of 3-star general in the military. And she once told me in one of our sessions that if you take care of people, then if you take care of people, then the mission will take care of itself. And you generally in the military, it's taught that the mission comes first. But she taught me very early, and I never let go of that. That in fact, if you take care of people, then the mission will take care of itself, versus the mission being the most important thing. And so that leads us back to what we all know: the most important asset that any organization has is the people who make up the organization.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to get to that, but there's something else that I want to talk about. So we talked about your service, which, really kind of stands out, right? But I also want to talk about something else that stands out, right? I mean, you are a scholar and a servant, right? So, we're obviously going to get into a little bit more about your public service, and we dabbled a little bit into your military service, but I mean, you are a scholar through and through, right? Uh, your background, Morehouse, UPenn, Central. And then a president management fellow, for those who don't know, because you can just throw that out, and they don't know what that means, but that's like the most esteemed fellowship in our country, right? The Presidential Management Fellowship, right? And I think that's unique. We always assume, and I'm not trying to say, education is directly equivalent with intelligence. I'm not trying to say that, but it is unique to have a public servant who is also a scholar. So we talked about your military service, but now I want to talk about, your scholarship as well. Being so accomplished scholastically, what does that mean for you in regards to public service?
Wow, so that's sort of a loaded question, Dr. Watkins.
Didn't mean for it to be. Take it however you choose. I really am trying to say, like,
Yes.
it's incredibly,
Yeah.
incredibly impressive. And I kind of want you to kind of, talk about that uh to people who might not know.
So let me talk about education just generally. And so to the extent that the education is important, and I try to stress this to people that I mentor and other students that I have the privilege of being in front of in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. Education is important, but I think what's most important about education is not that you get it, but when you get it, and that you're able to capitalize on the education that you receive for a specific purpose, whether it be leadership, whether it be entry into the workforce. There has to be a specific purpose behind why you're learning. And so that's number one. And another thing that's not known is that in the armed forces in particular, I'll just use that as an example. There is a focus on education that's not known. And so when an officer goes to the officer-based course or the officer advanced course, these are actually educational opportunities that are akin to be in an academic setting. And so you're required to do a lot of critical thinking, a lot of writing. And so there's plenty opportunities for you to apply critical thinking to analysis around issues, and that become a part of a written work product. And oh, by the way, a lot of the responsibilities of military officers are to handle some of the administrative tasks associated with leadership, which requires a lot of reading and analysis. And so I think those two things help to make for what I would consider to be a warrior scholar. And I don't think my opportunity is, my situation is unique. I think there are a lot of people who come out of the military who are both scholarly and are of the warrior class. And so I wouldn't place too much weight on that, because there are a lot of individuals who have that skill set.
Yeah, certainly in the military, but you don't always see that in public service. right? And I think that is unique. I mean, a lot of criticism that you hear is that many of our elected officials, not just locally, but nationwide, people feel they lack the the credentials that you think uh, should be present for someone in that position. And I'm not saying that you have to have those credentials, but the fact that you do is just really kind of like, wow, right? This is just really, really incredible. You also talked about how the people are more important than the mission, because if you take care of the people, the mission will be accomplished. And I'm thinking about that in terms of Durham County, right? You will be our elected official, or one of our elected officials, serving on a board with other elected officials. So you'll have to work with them to move towards goals. But that's not only it, it kind of goes both ways. You have to also work with the people who elected you. Like, we can't just look at you and say, Commissioner Valentine, fix all of our problems, right? We're also responsible for the county that we live in. So with that being said, what are some things that you feel is important for kind of a responsible, like, county citizenry, right? All right. So, like, we can just say it on myself, because I know there's a lot of people in Durham County that are doing amazing, amazing work, right? So we'll just, focus it on me. If I want to be a more responsible citizen of Durham County and work hand in glove with the efforts of the county commission, what would that look like? And what areas should I be thinking about?
So let me answer the question twofold. First, as an active member of Durham County, I think it's incumbent upon our citizens to participate in the process of governance through attending some of the meetings that occur on a monthly basis down at the county seat. I also realize that some people's day-to-day responsibilities don't allow them to participate in that particular way. Although I can say there is some value, particularly as a collective, in coming and sharing your grievances or your solutions with the decision makers in a public setting that is powerful. But on the other hand, I think that as a public official, we have a responsibility to be out in the community more often than just the election cycle. And by that, I don't mean attending, various functions that ceremonial functions that are required by virtue of being in the position. What I'm talking about is being actively engaged with members of the community through meetings. And so since the election, I've taken a little time off, but I'm beginning now to re-engage with parts of the community that like to talk more about governance around the county. And so I'm going to try to do sort of quarterly meetings or with the members of this community who are interested in having an ongoing dialogue about what government should look like. And I will tell you through my work on the Planning Commission currently, I'm very actively engaged with a conversation with the community, particularly around issues on environmental issues, excuse me, as it relates to development around the county. And so I want the citizens in Durham to know that I'm listening. And when they give me a data point, it's always one that I consider ultimately in decisions that we have to make. And I think we probably should do a little bit more listening to those who charge us with leadership. And so that's how I intend on working with the public, and also using that data that I collect in the decision making along with my colleagues. And so I look forward to that challenge.
I want to get into colleagues here in a little bit, but I actually want to ask a question that just popped into my head.
I know it's
I
a good one.
know,
I see your face. I know it's a good one.
Well, no, I'm just interested. I love stories, by the way. I absolutely love stories. And I think a lot of people can't imagine how eventful and how life altering just being on the campaign trail is, right? Like if you like sit me down, like I can tell story after story after story after story of like unbelievable things that have happened to me on the campaign trail. And I'm actually curious, like on the campaign trail for a county commissioner, what is probably like one of the most memorable moments of the campaign trail that really stand out to you?
I think my most memorable moments are when time is of the essence. You know, when you're campaigning, your schedule usually doesn't allow much flex time. But on many occasions, members of the public demanded that you sort of stretch your calendar so that their needs that they think need to be addressed can be addressed. And so I can remember being in Southwest Durham once, and someone was pointing out about some of the damage that was being done to their home and to the environment as a result of this development. And so they absolutely positively thought that I needed to see it with my own eyes to be able to believe it. In fact, that was the case. It was absolutely unbelievable what I saw, and the fact that we don't have a mechanism to deal with these issues in real time is quite frankly troubling. And so hopefully we can sort of work together to solve some of these problems. But yes, you know, the way that the public very passionate about change and how they think you should be the person charged with changing sort of the policy with regards to those changes and the urgency. And so I sort of enjoyed those moments on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I think people don't quite understand how intense the campaign trail is. We used to have this saying on my campaign team that you don't use the restroom when you have to, you use it when you can,
Right.
right? So we
Right.
used to say all the time.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it is really intense, and you're right. You know, you are invited into people's lives,
Yes.
into their hopes, into their struggles. And that is something very unique to being a public servant. And that kind of brings me to, you know, one of my next questions, right? All public servants, you know, share that in common, right? Regardless of what you think about, you know, public servant X or public servant Y, they all have engaged to some level with the community, being invited into their hopes, dreams, aspirations, and trials and tribulations, right? So I kind of want to ask a question about working with other bodies of government, right? What is the interaction between, say, city council and the Durham County Commissioners? I know often council members and commissioners are in the same space at public events. I mean, all the time. But what is there? Explain the relationship between those two bodies of government, if there is one. What is it?
So that's a great question, Dr. Watkins. And quite frankly, I'm interested in more collaboration between the city government and the county government, particularly as it relates to issues around development, uh, rezoning, and the like. And there is a joint commission that currently exists. But during my initial term in office, I plan to be a part of an effort to make the county more instrumental in decisions about development across the county. And so, as you know, the type of housing that will be required for um, the workforce here in Durham County is going to be a challenge. And how we address that need around housing has to be one that's sustainable. Currently, I think we're on an unsustainable trajectory. And so we don't seem to have rhyme or reason to the way that we um, approve projects and the way that is mindful of the community. And so I'm hoping that if I'm given the opportunity to work in that capacity, to sort of bring some of the responsibilities back to the county with respect to how decisions are made around development. I think we're a little bit out of balance in that regard. And just let me give you a specific example. In downtown Durham, density makes sense with regards to our housing needs. But as you move out into the county, that might not necessarily, the way we reach density may not make sense for some of the communities in the county. And so I'm mindful of that. And I just don't think that the county is in a position now to really have any influence on a lot of decisions that are made in that regard. And so I'd like for the county to play a bigger part. Certainly, there are those in the community who have supported me and disagree with me on this point, but I think that we should take a look at that and ensure that the county's equities are adequately weighed when around decisions regarding development.
Yeah, you mentioned the word unsustainable, right? If things don't change, what are some of the real consequences that people will see in their day-to-day life if this is not addressed?
So in Southwest Durham, there is a level of environmental impact on our waterways that could potentially impact on our drinking water. And in the immediacy of the need for making money, for lack of a better way to describe it, we are neglecting those things that are most important to us. And so ensuring that we have safe water sources, ones that we can use for our water needs, is something that we should take serious. And so there's currently federal litigation regarding some of the damage that's being done in Southeast. I keep saying Southwest, but actually Southeast Durham. And so we should keep laser focused on some of the damage that's being done to our environment and also to the property rights of individuals as a result of some of these decisions that we're making. And not to mention, we're making these decisions without adequately thinking about the infrastructure that's really needed to support the type of development that we're currently under. And so I think that over the next 25 years, we are going to see the consequences of that growth that I feel in present is unsustainable.
Wow, man, jeez, yeah, you're dealing with some really heavy stuff, right? Ooh, and you're thinking about this all the time. Tell me what role your family plays in all of this, right? I know every working person knows that sometimes the stresses of the workplace, they come to kind of rest at home, and there's nothing more critical than family. What role does family play in your life? And like I've asked with the other questions, how does that inform your approach to leadership?
Well, we have a phrase in the military, or actually, it's not a phrase. The commander is usually designated as six, and so Commander Six in this house is my wife, and so she she sort of leads the effort with respect to what's important for our family as a whole. And so for many months, even though I had an interest in jumping in the race for some of the reasons I've already talked about, ultimately the decision had to be a family one. And so my family coalesced around the idea of me being involved in public service in this way, like they had once before. But the fact of the matter is when you jump in, you're actually bringing your whole family in to this sphere as well. And so it is a very tough decision and one that someone shouldn't take lightly. because your family could be the subject of scrutiny in the same way that you are as a public official. But my wife is coalesced around the idea of public service for all the right reasons. And so here we are.
Wow. Wait, so the commander being the six, does that come from like your six being your rear and your commander has your back?
Yes,
What?
that's correct. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
okay. I feel
yeah.
good. Like I've never served in the military, but I was like, is that why?
Yeah,
Because I've always thought like, like a leader, sometimes has no problem leading from the back, making sure that they have the backs of the people that are on their team.
yeah.
Okay, that's really
Well,
cool.
I'm a big bottom up leader.
Yeah,
So those sort of people are top down leaders. That you're
absolutely.
only as strong as the person who is at the bottom of the organizational structure who actually needs the most support.
All right, so I have to say, poverty is a thing. You talked about public safety, you talked about people who need the most support. And I was going to go a different way, but what you just said made me want to add something else. Uh, talk a little bit about what you see as some of the root causes. You also talked about housing, right? So we can kind of, talk about all these things. What are some of the root causes regarding challenges to public safety? And then also you can dive a little bit into poverty as well, because you talked about housing, you talked about education, but I kind of want to hear about public safety and poverty. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I mean, certainly the socioeconomic conditions are vastly different in many of our communities across the county. And so, to the extent that public safety is issue, I think one of the big problems that we can solve is ensuring that our young people have something to do, whether it be recreational or with having a job and being able to add to the resources of a family. So certainly, jobs are important. Across the life cycle, jobs are important in terms of being able to sustain yourself. And to the extent that poverty is an issue in our county, I think one of the largest problems that we have is making sure that people have adequate access to employment. And so I am a believer, even though the capitalist system that we live under here in America doesn't really allow for 100% unemployed, 100% employability. I believe that's really the answer. We can sort of go back and forth with respect to what we believe wages should look like. And actually, our county is right in the middle of that discussion right now in a lot of areas. But people need jobs. People need jobs to be able to put food on their table, to put a roof over their head. And by the way, the discussion that we're having about affordable housing is actually a disingenuous one that we have with the public. It's based on an economic model that can't be sustained by people who are at a certain income level. So when we talk about affordable housing, what we really should be talking about is houses that are I'll use the word rent ready, right? In the sense that anyone could move in and have accessibility to a dwelling, and those sorts of dwellings don't exist. They just don't exist in the market driven economy that we have. It doesn't exist. And oftentimes when we talk about affordable housing, and I talk about it on the planning commission. And so when people make proffers for projects, they talk about the number of units that they're considering as affordable. But for the average person, that's actually not affordable, which is why many people are leaving Durham County and going to surrounding counties in search of places where they can afford to live, because Durham, in many regards, is becoming a place that's becoming unaffordable, and I'm concerned about that. And so, what we do about that, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but we have to work collectively to bring that sort of in balance, because right now it's out of balance.
Yeah. Wow. That's a huge one right there, where the traditional, I don't know if demographic is a correct word, but I'm going to use it for lack of a better word, are often forced to move outside of the county. But we are attracting new people, right, who are attracted to the growth of Durham County. And that's really just changing the makeup of the county. Um, is that a bad thing?
Wow. So actually, someone asked me that the other day, and so I think that's a proper balance, right? And so I can remember years ago when my family and I first came to this area, and I left active duty to go to law school is when we landed here in Durham, and downtown Durham was a shell of what it is today. And so when I look at downtown Durham, I think to myself, what a success story! What a success story! And I think we can attribute the leadership of Mayor Bell for sort of instituting some of the changes that led to the revitalization of downtown. On the other hand, I've heard Mayor Bell say that had he to do it all over again, he probably would have attempted to attack the issue of poverty on the front end as opposed to the back end. But I think that a lot of the sort of progressive nature of Durham with respect to um, people coming here from other parts of the state to enjoy what we have to offer. Um, it's because of the efforts of men like Mayor Bell. But I guess to add to specifically answer your question, is it a good thing? Well, there's consequences to every decision that you make, and sometimes some of the unintended consequences of development is that people who are on the lower socioeconomic scale take the brunt sometimes of the development, and sometimes communities that were intrinsically minority ones or African American ones lose their fabric as a result of the changes that occur. So I think that we should be mindful and intentional about that during the planning phases of a lot of these projects. So that's a tough question. That's a tough question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it is really tough. Absolutely, absolutely tough. And I think that I mean, that's why I really wanted to ask that question about, how are we going to, address poverty? And, you really discussed the importance of employment and jobs, and that is really, really critical. Well, we have discussed a lot, and you have spent a lot of time with me, and I just had, two more questions. Not trying to rush to the conclusion of our conversation because I can talk to you forever, but I do know that you have many, many important things to do. And again, thank you so much for your time. The first question is kind of a weird question, and it's often because, I ask questions based off of the conversation. And so I might miss opportunities to inquire or have discussions about, something that the guest really wanted to talk about, right? So I'm going to ask you, um, was there a question that I could ask that I didn't ask that you were kind of coming into here hoping that you'd be able to talk about something specific? I want to give you that opportunity now to kind of, this is weird, pose that question to yourself and then answer it because I just don't want to leave stones unturned, but I know it's inevitable I will. So this is my attempt to kind of, cover my bases. So what question did I miss out on? What's that question? And then please, answer that question.
So what I thought one of the questions would be today, Dr. Watkins, in light of the fact that your wife and I were former colleagues in the social work department at North Carolina Central University, I was thinking that you would ask me more questions around the direction of social services here in Durham County. But to the extent that wasn't asked, I think that I see myself, particularly with a background in social work, playing a instrumental role in ensuring that the provisions of social services across the spectrum, particularly in the areas of mental health, and ensuring that the service delivery and the ability to provide quality services are in place across the county. And also be looking closely at Department of Social Services with regards to child welfare and our uh, how our institutions are handling issues around permanency planning. That seems to be a big issue in our community. I heard it a lot during the time that I was campaigning. In fact, at one of the venues, someone in the audience asked me um, to make a pledge to defund some social services, which I am not in favor of. Not in favor of defunding social services, just like I'm not in favor of defunding the police. I think that our institutions have a purpose and a function in our county, and so to the extent that they need to be reformed in some way, I can certainly look at looking at ways that we can do things differently. But I think that these pivotal social services are in place for the most marginalized in our society, in our community, and I support them, and I'll be looking in every way, shape, or form through my service to ensure that those things happen.
A huge shout out to social work. It's not just my wife who has committed her life to social work, but my mother was employed by the Guilford County Department of Social Services. So those people have surrounded me my entire life, and just huge shout out to just that work that is being done, because quite often it's underappreciated, underrecognized, because oftentimes they help individuals who might fall through the cracks. It's not always, but fall through the cracks. And when you fall through the cracks, I think the most difficult thing is that you become invisible. I don't know if that, is accurate, but they become invisible. And it's the people who work on social services that say, I see you, and then work to provide resources and support. So I thank you for calling me out on that. I really, really appreciate you talking about that. And I also just really appreciate the work that both you and my wife do. And I will also have to say that I am working really hard to have one of my guests on this podcast be my wife. We are going to make it happen. I promise. I promise. I promise. But yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much. But I do have one more question for you, and it's a serious question, but it's kind of unrelated to like specific policy pieces. But I just kind of want to know, and I haven't asked this question of anybody else. I've had people on the show who have been scientists, people who are working on science policy. Um, but when I read your bio, I obviously saw leadership, leadership, leadership. I've asked you questions about leadership already, and I wanted to finish it off with this. Whether at present or historically, what is a single leader that if you had an opportunity to have a meal with, even if it means that you have to travel in time or whatever, to have a meal with, to pick their brain, who would that leader be, and why?
That's a great question, Dr. Watkins. I think that if I had an opportunity to talk to a leader, I think it would be Nelson Mandela, uh, a man who committed himself to freedom for his people in South Africa, and paid the price of being incarcerated for nearly half of his life for that struggle, only to be released and become president of a nation and not harbor the resentment that he rightfully could have harbored, and perpetrated probably atrocities against those who um, treated him with less than a dignified way. I definitely would like to sit down and talk to him if I could, to tell him, to ask him exactly where does that level of grace come from internally, to be able to forgive and to be able to put your country on a different trajectory based on the deeds of the collective, rather than wanting to get back at someone with a level of rage and revenge that probably was warranted. And so I really have a high regard for Nelson Mandela and his impact on the world.
Can't think of a better way to end this podcast than that. Stephen Valentine, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your commitment to service. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for having me, and thank you to the Science Policy Action Network for the work they do in putting together this podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you.